Okay, so your heading is client-server architecture. Client-server architecture. That sounds really big and techy and complicated, but it's really not as hard to understand as it sounds. And in fact, all of you, I would argue, are using the client-server architecture right now. Okay, so what does it mean, and how does it have an effect on us and how we use networks today? Okay, well, let's take a step back first. And let me introduce two different terms which you've probably heard before, at least one of them, and I want to distinguish between them. So, let's have a think about this. A LAN and a WAN. Strange acronyms, but let's go with them. Now, a LAN, I think most of you know what a LAN is, or at least what it stands for. It's an acronym which stands for local. What's the A stand for? Area, and then the N, of course, we're in communications systems, so the N stands for network. Okay, a local area network. Now, you can probably guess, seeing as I'm distinguishing between these two, I'm trying to put them aside each other. The A and the N of WAN stand for the same thing. They stand for area and for network. But being that they're two separate ideas, they're actually in contrast to each other. What do you think the W might stand for instead of local? What might the opposite of local be? Yeah. Sorry? Sorry? Worldwide? Worldwide's not that bad, actually, because the W stands for wide. Not necessarily worldwide, but wide in that it's not just in your little area, which is what local means, right? When someone says, "Oh, can you go to the local shops?" They mean the shops that you're closest to, right? And wide means it's over a larger sort of area. That's what we're talking about, okay? So, what's the distinction between these two? The first thing you should know is that I've been a bit sneaky here and said that there's like a big solid line between LANs and WANs. There's not. It's sort of more like a wavy, sort of shady line, okay? Because it's not necessarily easy to look at a network, particularly one which is sort of medium in size, and say, it's this one or it's that one, okay? But this is still a helpful distinction nonetheless, even if it's closer to a spectrum than it is to black and white, okay? So let's distinguish between them. When we say local, usually what we're referring to is usually within a building or a site. Building or a site. So a building would be something like, say, Cameron Block, right? Or maybe your house. That's a building. What I mean by site is that sometimes, for example, in our school, right, you might have several buildings, but really they comprise a unity, okay? So we would say that James Roos has a LAN, which is comprised of multiple buildings, but it's all one site, okay? And I think that's still a justifiable local area network, okay? Now again, it's like, well, how do I know which one it is? As I go to the next one, you might be able to distinguish it a little easier. When we say a wide area network, we're usually thinking about geographically wide, okay? Geographically wide. So we're talking about, say, something over the size of a suburb, okay? Or maybe a state or a country. Or these days, now the globe, right? The entire world, okay? I think the key idea that distinguishes these two is that when you look at a building or a site, so I said your house or the school, okay, all the people using this local area network have strong bonds apart from the network. Does that make sense? So everyone at the school, like students and teachers, if I took away the LAN, you would still be related to each other. Yes? You're still in classes together, I still teach you, I still see you in the playground and so on. Okay. But when it comes to a wide area network, if you take away such a network, like say the public telephone network or the internet, okay, there are people who are accessible through this network who you might actually have no relationship with if I remove this network. Does that make sense? So here, there's people who use this network tend to be unified already, whereas people who use this network are unified by virtue of the network. Okay, and they weren't unified in any way before. Okay, so that's a helpful way to distinguish, rather than like you know, is this like, what, 3 kilometers radius or 4 kilometers radius? It's not like a nice concrete number, okay? It's more about purpose and functionality, okay? Now, speaking of purpose or functionality, why do people usually have a local area network? Being that the people here already have relationships with each other, they already work together, that kind of thing. What reasons do you suggest? You can think of, you know, our school. Why would we have a local area network? Now, I don't need the network to talk to people because I can just, you know, say hi. Why would we do this? Yeah. Ah, good. Okay, so shared. Let's go with access and sharing of. Now, there's a phrase here we learned it a couple of days ago, right? What kinds of things do we want people on this network to access and share? Yeah. Perfect. Exactly right. Network resources. So, you know, Ricky's example was the internet, okay? So that's a modem. You've got really just one internet connection going outside the school. But we want everyone in this space to be able to access it, okay? So we put a network in place that allows you guys to hook into it, okay? By the same token, printers or hard drives and so on and so on. We talked about this at length before, okay? So network resources, don't forget that also means software and data as well, okay? Now, when you think about wide area networks, what is the purpose of a wide area network? Usually, for example, a suburb or a state, you don't have people sharing a printer. You know, I'm just going to send this to my printer that's in Epping. I'll be right back, guys. It's not usually about sharing resources. What's the purpose of a wide area network? Maybe I should ask an earlier question. What are some examples of wide area networks? I've already given you 2. Some examples? Okay, so for example, the internet. Give me another one. Maybe an older one. What you reach for every time you... Sorry, yep. The telephone network. Okay, so... Now, let's think about both of these. Okay, let's think about both of them. Particularly the phone one, because it's a little clearer, okay? The phone network is not about sharing resources at all, is it? What is if you had to describe it in a sentence, what's the purpose of the phone network? Why do we install phones? Israq, what do you reckon? Say it again louder. Okay, good. Now, so this is getting at the purpose of a wide area network. I think this is correct. I think Israq is right, that the purpose of a wide area network is almost always communication. But hold on a second. Isn't a local area network also communicating? What's the difference? What's the difference between these two? Okay, so number 1, we're talking about the difference of scale. Okay. But number 2, if you remember back a few lessons to when we had that Venn diagram, which didn't look like a Venn diagram, it just looked kind of like a seashell actually. But anyway. We distinguish between systems that communicate, but they communicate because they have to, right? We talked about traffic lights. They communicate because there's no other way to achieve their purpose except they have to communicate, okay? As opposed to systems that were specifically designed for communicating. And if you can't communicate, you might as well not have the system at all, okay? So here, I suppose we would say the explicit purpose of a wide area network is explicit communication, okay? I just want to talk to someone, right? And they might be very, very far away. So therefore, I introduce a system which lets me do that, okay? Whereas a local area network is more about, well, I want to be able to get to this stuff. And the easiest way I can do that is to introduce communications links, okay? Rather than, for instance, getting every single computer and every single laptop in the school and giving it a wireless, you know, dongle for its own internet connection. Tremendously inefficient way to do it, okay? Much better to use a communication system like this. Okay,